All right. Hey, welcome back to BCB Live. We're the safest station in the nation. We're joined, Drive Safe Day, by Mr. John Kingston from FreightWaves. John, what's going on? FreightWaves, Sonar, you're the data guy. And John, before you can answer that question, you got to look right here. You're a volatility guy. Look at this fuels chart right now. You're talking about volatility. Look at that. That is craziness.
Yeah, can you hear me, guys? Because I didn't get an audio check. Can you hear me?
We hear you, sir.
All right, good. Yeah, the fuel spread in Sonar, fuels.usa or localized it's a very simple calculation between the wholesale price that's in the ULSDR data series in Sonar and the retail price, the DTS series. And when you see that kind of volatility, it'll tell you that the retailers, remember, the oil companies do not set the price at the retail level. They do set a wholesale price. And that wholesale price does move pretty much very, very high correlation with futures. Retail doesn't. When you get this kind of crazy volatility in the wholesale price, the retailers, they can't react that fast. And so this is why you get these nutty swings in this spread. So you go from a retailer one week having a price that's maybe making them a lot of money, and the next week not maybe making them a lot of money, and the price could be the same. This is because of the enormous volatility that we've seen really in oil markets all this year, and in diesel markets in particular, going back to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So yeah, retailers, their business is not set up really to make money on gasoline or diesel. It's set up to make money on all the other stuff. So but the spread between the two, between wholesale and retail, has been absolutely nuts this year.
And John, as we look forward, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better, right? I mean, with winter coming on, with some of the more sanctions going to go on with Russia as we get over closer to the end of this month, I mean, it's just not going to get any better. It looks like, right?
No, there really isn't any. When you say get better, you're talking in terms of the fuel spread, the volatility. And no, you're right. The sanctions are against Russia. Nobody's really sure what kind of impact that's going to have. The weather is always extremely volatile. In case everybody really doesn't understand, diesel is a distillate. So is heating oil. Diesel also can be a substitute for natural gas in some applications. So whether we have a cold winter or a warm winter, it's going to have a really big impact on diesel. I say more than in most years.
Unless, like the rumors we hear, and that's really a big question I have, because we hear it from the truck drivers, especially calling in emails saying, well, we may not have to worry about it because it looks like we're going to run out of diesel. John, talk to us a little bit about that.
All right. So this number that comes out every week from the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, got a lot of attention starting about 2 weeks ago. So they come out every Wednesday, the report's out today, with all sorts of statistical numbers on supply, numbers on demand. So there is a figure called days cover. And it's a very simple number. You take the total average consumption and you divide average daily consumption, and you divide that into inventories, and you come out with days cover. And days cover basically assumes, but says if all production out of refineries stopped and all imports stopped, how many days could inventories hold out? Now, that's not going to happen. The refining industry in the U.S. is not going to shut down. We're not going to stop imports. But, I mean, it's an important number because tight inventories will drive up the price. So around this time of year, that number should be somewhere around, I'd say, 30, either side of 35 days. And as of like 2 weeks ago, it was 25 days. So that got picked up in a lot of media, a lot of social media, as we're going to run out of diesel in 25 days. That's not what it means. But it does mean that inventories are tight. And when inventories are tight, it will drive the price higher.
Also, a lot of discussion around the United States dumping from their reserves out onto the open market, and in talking and discussing that. And it's also led into a little bit of the talk around the truck stop about how much fuel's out there and stuff like that. Go ahead and speak to the oil reserves that they're putting out on the market to help stem the price of fuel.
Yeah, well, the sales from the SPR have been running at about 800,000 to 1 million barrels a day now for several months. I have to go back and look at when they started. It's really been pretty amazing. It's certainly nothing that I've ever seen in my career covering oil. We've had certainly periods where oil was sold from the SPR, but that was usually in the wake of a hurricane. I know there was some sales back in 2011, I guess that was, when you had the Libyan revolution that pretty much shut down that country. But this sort of consistent sale of reserves, week in and week out that goes on for months is really unprecedented. I don't think there's any doubt that the price of oil is lower than it would have been had those sales not taken place. I mean, if you're putting 800,000 to 1 million barrels a day onto the market, that as if the country of Algeria cloned itself, because that's about what Algeria makes. And I think, for those who are saying, well, this is no big deal, if Algeria suddenly disappeared from the market tomorrow, you'd have a lot of problems. If another Algeria suddenly was created, that would be very good for consumers. So I don't think there's any doubt that the price is probably lower than it would have been as a result of the sales. The problem is, for diesel consumers, is that it's a long way to go from the sale of crude oil to making diesel. And with restrained refining capacity, the price of diesel relative to the price of crude and relative to the price of gasoline has soared. So that's a really big issue here. So yes, the SPR sales have helped hold down the price of oil, but the impact on diesel is probably somewhat limited.
John, we have the big, and you have the big FreightWaves in Chattanooga going on right now. What's the big conversation right now that you're seeing out there at FreightWaves?
Well, it's been a great meeting. Of course, unfortunately, I'm surrounded here by a lot of my colleagues, and we've been working really hard, pumping out stories, onto FreightWaves.com. So unfortunately, we haven't got out as much as we would like to. But look, it's always interesting to walk down the halls and see who's exhibiting, because that kind of tells you where the interest is. And right now this has been a great meeting, 1,800 people. First, we had a live event back in May. But I wasn't there, so that doesn't count, So this is my first one in 3 years. And what's interesting, of course, is that when you walk down the hallway and you look at the exhibitors, most of them are exhibiting something to do with transparency, or something to do with efficiency, automation of invoices, Internet of Things type of tools that aid in tracking freight. So those are the exhibitors. There's a lot of them here. Another theme has actually happened twice. I'm not just saying this because I did the interview on one, is China, and we've heard several things about China, and that maybe they've got some long-term problems here. On the one hand, we had a very good speaker yesterday named Leland Miller, who's a Chinese expert, who says he just does not see the Chinese government continuing this constant, as he termed it, backstopping of bad companies, bad businesses, to keep them afloat, to to have a really good growth rate look apparent. And then this morning I interviewed a guy named John Ibbotson, who's a journalist who wrote a book about declining population. And he says, the Chinese are really in the process of getting slammed by their one-child policy, because the country is getting very old very fast, and there are not young people coming behind them. And then that leads to the question of immigration in the U.S. The U.S. is also dealing with a significantly lower birth rate. And how does it reverse that? I think John's view is that you can't really reverse the birth rate, but you can bolster your economy by increasing immigration, which, as you know, is a very controversial issue. So that was a great talk, and I'm not sure when that'll be put up on FreightWaves TV, but I definitely recommend people going and watching it because it was outstanding.
Yeah, those are the demographics. Let me tell you that, 3-5 years ago, I would have thought there's no chance I would ever want to get involved and listen to somebody talk about the demographics. It's absolutely the most interesting thing, because it is so relevant right now when you talk about the United States, when you talk about the immigration, and when you talk about China and some of the policies that they've held. We've had Donald Broughton talking about that. It's absolutely amazing, what happened from, many years ago, how it's kind of catching up to us today, the baby boomers.
We told little vignettes. One of my favorite is that in China, the average Chinese child not only doesn't have siblings, but the average Chinese child doesn't have cousins either. Because after all these years of the one-child policy, it's highly likely that both parents are only children, so they don't have aunts and uncles, which means they don't have cousins. And the other little fact that kind of came up today, we were talking about the baby boom, of which I am a member in good standing, and the biggest surge of baby boomers during the whole, I think the baby boom was listed as going from like 1946 to 64. The biggest 3-year surge in births was 56 to 58. I was born in 56. And people who were born in '56 last year turned 65, which means if they were in a job that they were keeping primarily for the benefits, they didn't need to do that anymore. They could go on Medicare. And then that happens this year with people who were born in '57, and next year with people who were born in '58. So these are all lots and lots of people exiting if they choose to exit, not like me, I have no choice, no desire to exit. If they do choose to exit, are there going to be enough people there to replace them? And increasingly the answer is no. And increasingly the answer to solving that then is just more immigrants.
Yeah, I was thinking and wondering, and hearing you say that, I was kind of just going to my mind, is our big hope for the future from COVID and everybody going back to work, from workplace to the home? I mean, did we see any benefit from births coming from that period? Has that data came out yet?
I've seen a couple little references to it, and this is not like the 1965 Great Blackout in New York where you had a baby boom 9 months later. It is pretty apparent that we did not get a COVID baby boom from everybody being locked down.
Gotcha.
Nobody wanted to get near anybody, even during COVID. You know what? I'm good.
I do believe that baby boom 9 months after the November '65 blackout is real. It is not urban myth. Apparently, there actually was a surge in babies like 9 months after. It was November '65, so that would put it down to August '65. So I guess there's a lot of babies born in August.
Well, they didn't have good cable. They didn't have good cable TV in '65. So
it didn't matter if you had cable because you had no power either. So.
That's true. Exactly. Find something to do.
Hey, John, I want to thank you. I know you're a busy man. I know you got so much going on there. I want you to thank you for taking the time to come out here and join us here on BCB Live. John, before you get out of here, we are going to ask you to state your name and say you've been watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
I'm John Kingston. You've been watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
All right. Thanks, John.
All right.
We do appreciate
Hey, John,
it.
I appreciate you. Hey, great job out there again. Love your articles. I can't wait to see these on FreightWaves TV. I'll say it right now. I'll give you all a plug. Love the FreightWaves TV information. Tune in to that. John, give us a heads up, and we'll put it out there for you. We got to hear that interview. I'm telling you, demographics is for real.
Yeah, when it's up, I'll let you know, Rick.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Thanks, John.